Well, welcome and thank you for joining us on the Elders Climate Action Electrify Your Life workshop. In a few seconds here, I'm going to share my screen and begin the presentation. Thank you for joining us for the Climate Action Electrify Your Life workshop. We thank you for the opportunity to show you how electrification is the most immediate, personal way to respond to the climate crisis. We believe electrification to be the best way to advocate for the planet by building a strong connection to what the Earth is calling for. This is the first of seminars on electrification offered by Elders Climate Action, providing hands-on ideas and recommendations. After today's workshop, all registrants will receive a copy of the slides, a link to this video recording on YouTube, a copy of the chat, and a follow-up list of resources. You will also receive a written reply to each of the questions raised by you in the chat and the breakouts. I'm Robert Whitehair, a volunteer with Elders Climate Action, and I'm so thankful that I have been given the opportunity to host today's call. I am joined by our renowned speaker, Sean Armstrong from Redwood Energy, and from ECA all over the country, Roger Luckman, Mike Allen, Pete Marsh, and Jen Chandler. We literally are from all over the country. You'll be pleased to know, too, that all of us are well on our way on the electrification journey in our own homes. Some of us haven't even removed the natural gas meter. For those of you new to Elders Climate Action, we are grandparents, great uncles, great aunts, and everyday folks who are determined to do all we can to leave a livable planet for future generations and all life. Our programs, communications, and chapters are focused on engaging elders in solving the climate crisis. At ECA, we are elder-centered and volunteer-driven, seeking to inform, inspire, and engage older generations to take action on the climate crisis at the local, state, and federal levels. We are out of time. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the world faces unavoidable, multiple worsening climate hazards over the next 2 decades, with global warming at 1.5 degrees centigrade, that's almost 3 degrees Fahrenheit, within 7 years or sooner. Hitting this warming level will result in additional severe, irreversible impacts. There's alarming information coming from corporations that their future existence is in jeopardy. Small businesses are concerned about being able to remain open. We are out of time. And I'll put it in the chat, I'll put this link to this screenshot, as well as a few other things you might find useful. We are lucky, though, because our fossil fuel appliances failed. Homeowners have an opportunity to plan ahead to electrify, and when ready, plug in electric alternatives to fossil fuel. Your oil, gas, water heater is probably the first thing to go. Maybe your car or truck next, maybe your gas dryer. But the plan is today to give you options and ideas about how you might be able to plan when those things do fail, so that you can go electric with all your equipment. Some people always ask us, well, what about the IRA rebates? What's happening with that? The story is that it's grinding slowly but strongly through the Department of Energy. 17 states have now either applied for or have been given the right to start issuing IRA funds. The first state is New York. The other 16 states and District of Columbia that are shown on this map are in the process of applying, and the IRA funds will come shortly. The purpose of this seminar is not to talk about IRA. We will talk about it in the breakouts if you want. But the idea is to let you know that things are coming and that there's possibility for grants and rebates. And of course, you can take advantage now with the tax credits on your income tax, and those run every single year. So what many people do, they use a little bit one year and a little bit the next year. So the agenda, I've just started talking a little bit about the context. Roger Luckman is going to give a survey to see where we are. And then Sean Armstrong is going to make a presentation on electrifying your life. We will have breakout groups where we can spend more time talking about what your specific issues are. I can't see the number of people here. I think it's getting close to 70. Perhaps if that works out to about 18 to 20 people per breakout group. And you'll see Roger Luckman, Pete Marsh, Mike Allen, and myself will be in the breakout groups, and then we're going to move our speaker from breakout group to breakout group answering questions, and then we'll give you some idea of what some of the ground rules are. So Roger, if you want to put up on the screen, I think you have sharing rights. I'll stop sharing. If you would put up on the screen the survey, that would be good. We get started on that.
Roger, you're muted.
That's it. Yep, we're all set there. Let me just bring up the survey here. So we just have a few questions that hopefully you can answer in just a couple of minutes. We're interested in knowing what kind of home you live in. We have the various different types here. There's something else, treehouse down here. Who knows what might go down there? And whether or not you own or co-own your home, the challenge there being that renters have to deal with landlords. That can be a very, very difficult situation in terms of making the changes you'd like to make. So we'd kind of like to know about that. And then we'd like to know where you stand on the journey towards electrification. So for each of these items, you have the opportunity to say whether you have it now, whether you plan to get it, so that you really, it's on your radar and you really have an idea about when you might be getting it, or you're thinking about it. Now, if none of those is true, you just skip over the question. If you don't have it, you're not thinking about it, just skip over the question. You leave those blank, so you don't have to have a filled in circle everywhere there. And then we'd like to know what your interest is in learning about each of these topics. One is preparing a plan for electrifying, selecting a contractor, purchasing clean electricity so that your switch to electricity can make the biggest difference. And then finalizing or financing, where you're going to get the money from to do what you want to do. And then how do you select appliances? So those are the questions. The link is in the chat. And Robert, I think you want to ask folks just to jump in now and fill that out, right?
Yes, we'd like everyone to fill it out right now to give us an idea moving forward today of what kinds of questions we're going to be facing, what kinds of things we can help you with, and then what we can do moving forward. So take a few minutes right now. We'll stop here for about 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and then Roger will compile the results, and then somewhere in the next few minutes we'll report them to you so you can get an idea. I think you're going to find that all of us are facing some of the same issues having to do with electrification. I have removed the gas meter from my home. I'm lucky. Others have too. And many of us are in different stages of the journey. And we sure want to see where all of you are as well. So I'll stop there, give you a minute or two to fill out the questionnaire.
How do you get the questionnaire?
The link is in the chat.
Chat?
It says survey there.
See down at the bottom, there's a thing that says chat about the very bottom. You'll see this chat, and it has a number. I think it's 13 right now. You open that up, and then inside the chat will be the link. And you click on the link, and the questionnaire will come up.
Yeah, I can do it live. We've got 45 responses now. Bring them up.
Yeah, go ahead and bring those up.
Okay. And let's see, we don't have a view thing here. There we go. So people should be able to see that.
So we have 80% single family home. Is that what that says? And
Yep.
We'll go up a second. Most people own their home. Is that right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, about 95% folks are owning their own home. And most of the other folks are a townhouse or condo. We've got most folks in single family homes, not a lot of mobile homes, some folks in an apartment, a small number actually right now. So that's kind of what we expected, that given our membership, that we might be seeing this and the folks who are interested in making changes. And now in terms of what people have right now and what they're up to, we've got a bunch of folks here, 13 who've got a whole home heat pump, 11 who are planning, so on their way, and then we got 18 more are thinking about it. Partial home, less popular, a few people there, some people thinking about partial home. Heat pump water heaters, not quite as many as heat pumps. A lot of people thinking about heat pump water heaters. People who have an electric water heater, but not a heat pump. We do have 6 folks there and some other folks thinking about that. Induction stoves, lots of thinking about there and a few people who have it. So heat pumps are really the most popular. Electric resistant stove, a few folks have that. And then we come down here to, there's a level of interest in learning more about various topics. So here we have preparing your plan. And what we're seeing here is that a lot of people are really interested in that. Some people have somewhat interest. So there's a lot of interest in making a plan for electrification. That's what the workshop's all about. That's good news. In terms of selecting a contractor, there is also significant interest there as well among those who are most interested and somewhat interested. In terms of purchasing clean electricity, a little bit less interest there. That may depend on where you're located and what's going on there. Financing, a very popular topic, obviously. Deal with our pocketbooks. And then selecting appliances. What are you going to choose and how do you choose? That's very, very, very popular there. So we do have a lot of interest in the same topics that we're going to be covering today. And we've got a lot of folks who are really thinking about doing something about this in the near future. So that's exactly what we've been looking for.
Can you move that bar over so we can see the adoption of the technologies on that top, on this top one?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, right. Good point. So heat pump clothes dryers, relatively few and not a lot of interest there. Electric vehicles, a lot of people thinking about that. And we do have 12 people who actually have their EV already and some planning here. Plug-in hybrids, and solar panels are probably as popular as heat pumps there. And a lot of people thinking about solar panels. I think that's covered it. Thanks for reminding.
Roger, thank you so much. That's an excellent overview of what we thought we would see and the kinds of things. Fortunately, these are the kinds of topics that our speaker, Sean Armstrong, is going to cover. And he's going to speak until about 11 o'clock. And Sean, I'll give you kind of a 5-minute warning. And then at sometime around 11, we're going to go into breakout rooms where we're going to kind of sort down these questions to more and more detail and give you some specific answers. Let me introduce Sean. He's a renowned electrification authority. Till now, his firm was designer of fully half of the all-electric resistance built in California and 1/4 of the zero net energy residences built in North America between 2011 and 2020. He's co-authored 6 guides to building electrification. And the one that would be most interesting to you is the Pocket Guide to All Electric Retrofits. And we'll put that in the chat, something that you can start with if you want to see how you should get started with your own electrification. Besides all that, Sean is just a generous person. He's been very generous with his time today and helping us prepare for this workshop and preparing answers and help to all of you. So I want to welcome Sean Armstrong. Thank you, Sean, for joining us.
And thank you, Robert. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Okay, so we're going to kick this off. Just briefly, I've been doing this, whatever we'd call this sort of educating about how to live on renewable energy since 1995. So almost at 30 years and lots of fun. I had a brief stint as a high school science teacher, but then really felt like I was gonna, like the meaning of my life would be most fulfilled if I was actually doing projects as opposed to just teaching. So starting in 2005, I went to work for our area's largest general contractor and developer. And together we innovated zero net energy housing. So this is the first, on the right-hand side, these candy-colored senior houses in Fort Bragg, low-income housing. And every single one of these houses produces enough electricity, even in December, that if it had a battery, it could be off-grid. And they're just lovely little senior houses. On the bottom here, the left-hand side, this is a zero net energy. So 100% solar offset over a year, not necessarily every day, but over a year. So this is 12 stories tall. It's in Washington, D.C. It's one of my, it's under construction right now. It's a couple stories up out of the ground. And the lower left-hand side, that's my house. So I wanted to tell a story because they're fun. So I would say that our drive towards modern electrification, it starts with a desire for ice. This is ice being made in the desert on the left-hand side over in Persia. These are like ice pools, essentially. They'd freeze and then they'd store it at night. On the right-hand side, this is New Jersey in the 1800s. So on the left-hand side, this is an ice-making machine. This is one of the first heat pumps that we would call that today, where it's trying to make ice to keep beer cold. That's the whole point. You can see ice being delivered on the right-hand side during World War I. The men were off at war, so women got to do jobs again. And then we see the desire for electricity everywhere in our country. By like the 1920s, almost everyone who lived in a city, about 90% of the people who lived in cities had electricity. Frequently, the first thing you get is some light bulbs, because lamps and gas jets are both dangerous and smoky and the whole bit. So what we don't realize is there's literally more than 1 million of these houses built in rural America with batteries. You can see on the right-hand side a broken down old battery shed. But the Delco is a company, and then other competitors, they're trying to get people off-grid electricity. There's always been this tension. Should it be on the grid and off the grid? We're going to talk about this a little bit right now. On the grid. Everyone should be on the grid. So because there wasn't electricity even delivered to rural America, and electricity is awesome. I mean, it pumps your water and it gets your house warm and cold and blows fans and lights and entertainment like radios and just, getting rid of the drudgery of washing laundry by hand. Fantastic. So the Rural Electrification Administration, part of the alphabet soup of agencies during the Great Depression, this electrified rural America, because 90% of rural America didn't have electricity in 1934. So by 1959, all of America had electricity. And the 1950s is an important time because it begins a new era of electrification, where now they're trying to do clean electricity with nuclear power. Get rid of oil, get rid of coal. We've already gotten rid of whale oil, that peaked in the mid 1800s. And Ronald Reagan was hired out of Hollywood as a retiree. And he was then became the spokesman. And he actually, because he knew everyone in Hollywood after his career there, he recruited all of the Hollywood stars to show up on a television show, and became the #1 television show on Sunday nights, the Ronald Reagan General Electric Theater. And he had a show mansion. This is his mansion that General Electric and the other utilities built for him. And they'd have little black and white cameras coming through, and he'd illustrate how to use electric appliances like teapots, and showed off his electric lights. And then he toured the country, opening up every nuclear power plant until 1963. And that was how he became the great communicator, is because he became good at speaking to crowds of people who just built a nuclear power plant. So that effort by the electrical utilities and the American government, it sort of peaked in 1962 when the code itself changed, the electrical code, so that every house in the nation had 100 amps of power. That's an instantaneous, in the moment amount of power that you can have. And more than that would melt the wire that's delivered to your house, or would make it dangerous potentially. So everyone has a copper wire delivered to their house that's thick enough for 100 amps of instantaneous power. So Jen on our chat at the beginning said, hey, I have an underground wire, and it's 100 amps. The service to my house is 100 amps, which is a certain thickness of copper wire represents. So she can't affordably get 200 amps delivered, because she would have to trench and dig up her yard. And you don't have to. This presentation is going to show how you don't have to go anywhere past 100 amps of service to your house, among other things that I'm going to try to show. But I just want to put that out there, that any house built after 1962 has 100 amps. And almost all houses have been retrofitted to at least 100 amps. About 4% of houses are left that have less than 100 amps total. So it's a California story for me, because I live in California now, but I'm from a farm in Wisconsin. I grew up with party line telephone on a rural electric co-op. So, but California is interesting because they passed the nation's first air quality act in response to having the nation's worst air quality, and that's still true today. And then in 1970, California got an exemption because Ronald Reagan and Nixon were friends. So we got an exemption from the Federal Clean Air Act, which is how we've been able, I'll show you a little bit later, how we've been able to regulate air pollution in California differently than any other state. And then in 1974, we passed the nation's first Title 20, first energy code. And ever since, California has also been able to do different things in the state with their energy code than any other state. It's been interesting, for better or worse. Now, the worst starts, I would argue, in 2000, because our state got convinced by the gas scam of Enron. We got convinced that we should not be making people use electricity because electricity prices go up when fossil fuel prices go up. This was true back in 2000. Today, the less fossil fuel in your grid, the cheaper your electricity, because solar is the cheapest electricity of all right now, and has been for years. Nothing less expensive than putting solar into the grid. But at the time, the state of California pushed really hard to stop using electricity for anything and just burn gas directly in people's homes. It's been very, very problematic for 20 years since then. So history, but things changed in the 2017 Tubbs fire, and then the fires that happened afterwards. My mother-in-law died in the Tubbs fire. She had weak lungs. She was 60 years old, and she had cancer, thyroid cancer, in the 1960s, and had bad experience with the radiation therapy that kind of burnt a lot of her lungs around it with radiation when she was a teenager. You know, back when they thought cancer was something you'd catch from somebody else. So in the older days, anyway, she died. She died of smoke inhalation. And after 3 years of those fires, that's when Governor Newsom declared a climate emergency in the state of California. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means. What it meant, well, first of all, when my mother-in-law died, I hired lawyers to help cities in California ban gas, like the Berkeley gas ban, among many others. And then New York City started doing that, and Washington and Denver, and been an effort around the country, born somewhat of grief in California. And so the elected officials in this whole area that's in black outline, this is the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, because we have different laws in California. We are allowed to have these districts. And these districts then can say no fossil fuel combustion. We have dirty air. We can't handle any more new appliances. So the plan is in 2027, this black outlined area will be banning gas water heaters for new sales, not for owning one, but for replacing it. You saw that replacement timeline at the beginning that Robert put forward. That means that when one breaks, you would be getting an electric alternative at that point. And in 2030, that same approach to you can't get a new one starts in 2030 for the whole state, according to the California Air Resources Board. This is important. California is the #1 gas burning state in the United States, and 1 in 8 Americans live in California. So this policy has a large implication for our whole nation, even if it's just in California. But look here, California is really at the very tail end of success. And if you live anywhere else in this country that's in a light green or darker green, these are places where all electric construction has been going since the 1960s and never really stopped. You can see in Florida, it's 77% all electric construction there now, and Hawaii is 72%. So if you've gone vacationing to these places, you've no doubt stayed in an all-electric hotel and eaten at an all-electric restaurant, etc. This is mostly a technical dividing line. Where it's warmer in the country, old-fashioned heat pumps could work. Now they have computers in them, and they can work well all the way up into Canada. So I'll show you that in a couple of minutes. But basically, California, you see how it's only 8% all electric, even though we're surrounded by states that have far more. And that is the result, as I showed you, the energy crisis of 2000 and the state's effort to stop people from using electricity for things that you could use gas for, like water heaters or space heaters or stoves. So that's very much a policy problem in California that's thankfully finally getting addressed. But it wasn't the state that started it. It was developers. And I'll point this out. About 95% of construction in the United States is done by a developer, not by someone building their vacation home or their retirement home. in this country, developers who are trying to find the least expensive way to build that's also profitable, that's who makes these choices that you're seeing here. So this is my developer boss who's explaining why he adds solar on now and does all electric. And he says, hey, all electric is a no-brainer. This is my former boss back when I worked at Danco for 6 years. The cost of bringing gas to a building site is expensive. In our developments, all electric is less expensive to build and just as efficient or more efficient in operations. And you can't generate gas on site, but you can generate electricity with solar electric panels to lower utility allowances, which is utility bills in regulatory speak. So that pretty project in the lower left-hand corner, that's an example of about 34 projects we've done together that are 100% solar powered and all electric. It's the most profitable way for them to build. And my old boss, Chris, he would vote Republican, he would vote Democrat, he didn't care. He was very much just a businessman. And so this is not an ideological statement he's making, it's just fact. Like he loves spreadsheets. Here's the spreadsheet. Now this spreadsheet shows how keeping gas in this development of low-income housing, which is getting built right now in San Jose, this is the drawing. I realize this is kind of complicated, but I'll just point out on the left-hand side, it says all electric plus solar, right? And the right-hand side, this is a gas and electric project plus solar. So in neon green in the lower right-hand corner, it says $778,332, right? That is the net benefit for Chris Dart for this project over 15 years if he makes an all-electric solar-powered project. And on the right-hand side, if he had put in gas, because he can't generate electricity on site to lower utility bills, if he'd put in gas, as has been normal, it would have been $245,000 that he could sort of make off of installing solar. That difference of $500,000 is a lot of money. It's a part of what makes these projects actually get built is small amounts, like $500,000 to $1 million. So this has actually been a competitive way for us to apply for affordable housing financing, is putting solar and all electric. Developers, building, and Chris, this guy, he supports our current California code since 2016 to put solar on developments. Okay, now check this out. I just made this map for you yesterday. This is new reporting from the New York Times. And on the left-hand side, you can see over the course of our whole nation, the rise of the sale of, in blue, plug-in hybrids. So they're still using gas, but look below that. Electric vehicles and the rise of them. So right now, about more than 8% of the sales of cars in our country are electric cars, only electric, with another 10% or so that are plug-in. Now on the right-hand side, this is the Bay Area, which is leading our nation in purchasing electric vehicles. And in darker green, where the blue arrows are, those are where it's more than 50% of the sale of cars are electric. Like people driving home with the car in those darkest green areas, more than half the new cars moving into those communities are electric. Now, in China right now, the whole nation is 44% electric sales. And in Norway right now, it's 96% all electric sales in Norway right now. So this, what we're seeing in the Bay Area, will look like China, like a whole nation. We're expecting, well, I don't want to say it looks like China, but basically we're transitioning to all electric vehicles. And you can see the pattern in other nations, as well as in strongholds like the Bay Area, of how our nation on the left-hand side is growing and growing exponentially. That's a steep curve. So that's generally how anything that's really awesome gets adopted nationwide, is that once people are into it, it goes up, and it takes about 10 to 15 years for pretty much everyone to have it. Cell phones, color TV, list of technology, and it takes 10 to 15 years. Okay, so I mentioned earlier about the importance of not delivering a new electrical wire to your house. It's called a service. And we did this big study, my company, where for the utilities hired us. So we called up, more than 300 electricians, and we talked with more than 30. We found that basically getting a new service, which is the name of the wire, this blue wire to your house, getting a new service, an upgrade, the homeowners, are you going to pay anything that's red here? And the ratepayers, the utility, they're going to pay the blue. So everyone sort of pays in that case. Homeowners, though, you pay $2,500. And if you're getting up that underground wire that Jen was saying, that might be $30,000. That's the range. It's not less than $2,500. Could be crazy expensive. And then the time delays, if you do this to get a new wire to your house, 2 to 18 months. And so it's a problem. And don't forget, unexpected costs and unexpected delays happen more than half the time. Better odds than not, you're not going to enjoy this experience. You're going to get a shock, sticker shock, time delay, problem. Just there's going to be a problem. So don't do it. I'm going to show you how not to do it. One of the things to establish is that you don't need more than 100 amps. This is on the left-hand side in blue. This is households that are gas electric hybrid households, and this is their 15-minute peak of power demand in a whole year. And the orange line is for for all electric homes. And you can see that when you're all electric, you don't have that much bigger of a peak. And on the bottom, and you see how it goes from 4 to 80, you can see that no one really is using more than 80 amps. Nobody. Not all electric, not gas hybrid. So your 100 amps is enough. And that's true according to studies of huge populations. It's enough. And if you're interested in slowing down, because I know I'm talking fast, here's the booklet that was mentioned, a pocket guide to all electric retrofits of single family homes. A lot of the things I'm showing you are images from the book. I'm speaking in a succinct way, things that have like 4 pages of explanation, images, and help you understand it. We wrote it very thoughtfully for people to be able to read it and understand. We did our best. And all these different things are shown. Now, I'm going to show you now on a technical level how to have an all-electric home, starting with this yacht. If any of you guys like to go out on boats, I want you to have that sort of like, ooh, I want it feeling. This is 120 feet long, it's 3 stories tall, and it can go 100 miles a day just on the solar array on the roof. And it can go across the Pacific or the Atlantic. It comes with a submarine that pops out one side, and it comes with jet skis that are electric that pops out the other. And they say this year they're going to have a little AI guided electric helicopter airplane. I don't know about that, but the jet skis and the submarine are real. You've got a heat pump heated hot tub. There's a movie theater. There's a galley floor that's induction cooking. So this is about as nice as it gets. And it is $1 million for every 10 linear feet. So 120 linear feet of boat is a $12 million boat. Not that expensive, right? Okay. Now this is a little bit more on our scale. Normal folks, this is a $1,400 fireplace that I bought for Christmas time. And what it's doing is it has lights underneath it, and then it has an ultrasound making mist. And it takes almost 2 days for a whole liter of water to be turned into a mist. It really is not mist. It doesn't wet your hand even, but it looks like fire. And so this is my 6-year-old sticking her hand into the fire with a little Christmas tree behind it. Just so fun. It's completely safe. And it's made by Optimist. So Dimplex is actually the bigger manufacturer, and Optimist is the name of their mist-based fireplace inserts. And you can do these for outside fireplaces and inside fireplaces, and they can make heat. You can get heat, a little addition that is a heater. Plug it in anywhere. A little bit bigger fire. So you're trying to replace the gas stove on the left, which is for people who cook on a gas stove. It is the same health impact they found in 1995. I can show you the study. They studied households with about 300 households that had cigarette smokers of people smoking inside the house. It's 1995. And then they had about 300 households of senior citizens where they did not. And then they compared them within of who had gas stoves and who had electric stoves. And they were able to establish that having a gas stove was the same as having someone smoking a pack or 2 of cigarettes in the living room a day in terms of the health of the person who's cooking. And if you are the person cooking over a gas stove, what we're trying to say is that's just like having a secondhand cigarette smoker who lives in your house smoking. Something that none of us, I think, would live with today. At least we'd send our housemate outside to smoke their cigarettes. but that is the health equivalent of a gas stove. And it's been proven time and again, you know, that about 1 in 8 kids with asthma have it just because of their gas stove. That's been proven in Australia and the United States, and it harms your pets, particularly because there's the biggest source of formaldehyde is the gas combustion, and formaldehyde is heavier than air, so it poisons pets and little children. The ones that are close to the ground get this layer of formaldehyde that comes off the gas stove combustion. It's really dangerous. Formaldehyde causes leukemia in cats, dogs, and people. Okay. If you're barbecuing outside, you can get a Weber. This is, I just bought this a couple weeks ago. Here we are barbecuing hot dogs and mushrooms and like big portobellos and burgers and buns. You can get them 120 volt that just plugs in anywhere. You can deliver a 240 volt line to it for higher power so that you can have like a really big permanently installed barbecue with marble around it or whatever. This is just like, you know, stick it on a table, cook some corn kind of thing. But they're terrific barbecues, and they're great for condos, for those of you who live in you know, more shared wall housing, because they're not banned by homeowners associations. An electric barbecue is allowed, whereas briquettes make smoke. This doesn't make smoke, it just cooks your food and, you know, puts the sear lines on it. It's outside, it's fun. You can toast your marshmallows. I made a whole bunch of s'mores on it. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about power efficiency in order to help people stay on that 100 amps. Talk about some choices. I mentioned this is a 120 volt plugged in anywhere barbecue. That's an example of how you could put in a high power device outside barbecue that requires more than 100 amp service, or you could go with some power efficiency. Not a hard choice. Here's an example of some efficiencies. On the left-hand side, this is what an electric resistance dryer uses. 7,200 watts of total power in the moment. If you were having a heat pump dryer, it might be 1,800 watts. A condensing washer dryer, 1,400 watts. And level 2 EV charger, a fast EV charger for a car, so 30 miles per hour of charging. I charge at about 4 miles per hour of charging. It's great. Do it, only have to charge once a week. I just do it overnight. No big deal. So here's some choices. If you wanted to make space for a level 2 EV charger, you could get a different dryer. Here are some examples of dryers that don't use 7,200 watts, but instead using in that 1,400 to 1,800 watts to make space for a different level 2 charger. So this is mine. It's a combined condensing washer dryer. This is what the whole world uses. America is unusual in having electric resistance dryers, but if you travel, you'll usually find small condensing washer dryers. I have a big one. This is 4.5 cubic feet. I have a family, kids, a farm. You know, I want to wash a bunch of laundry at once. This is even bigger. This is a 7.8 cubic foot heat pump dryer. So heat pump, condensing washer dryer, and they'll trade back and forth in that 1,400 to 1,800 watts. So very big, you know, for like dog bedding or gigantic stuff. And then on the right-hand side, this is once again a combined heat pump washer dryer. This is a combined condensing dryer. This is a heat pump dryer. It uses less energy. It'll dry the laundry faster. So if you were going out there to get your combined washer dryer that just plugs into any outlet, doesn't need a specialized circuit, doesn't use a lot of power, this would be one I'd recommend, is the LG. You can see the pricing here. It's a combined machine, so it's 2-in-1, $1,800. This is a dedicated but very big heat pump dryer, $1,600. This is once again 2-in-1, excellent washing machine, excellent dryer, $2,200. Now, I see in the chat, there's all sorts of things going on. And I just want to check in. Oh, Cooper, you're helping out with this. Thank you for answering questions in there. If anyone has, you're welcome to, like, if there's anything urgent, you can just interject. Now, this is a water heater. On the left-hand side, A.O. Smith right now is making sort of your premium heat pump water heater. It's the quietest. That's what I like about it. In apartments, I'm using a Rheem heat pump water heater. They're noisier, but they're cheaper, you know, and these are low-income housing that I'm working with, so I always have to pay attention to budgets. And they're usually put in some place that isn't a hassle, like out in a patio closet. So If it makes more noise, no big deal. But the A.O. Smith really doesn't make noise. It's like as quiet as a dishwasher, just like a very gentle, quiet hum over there. And then on the right-hand side, this is also, all three of these, by the way, don't require rewiring. Well, the two on the left, they don't require rewiring. They just plug into any outlet. The one on the right, it uses 240-volt electricity, but it's very, very, very efficient. And so in total, that's energy, it's wattage, which is amperage times voltage is wattage. I know you don't have to memorize that, but just trust me when I'm saying that all three of these devices use the same amount of total power in the moment. The one on the right-hand side, though, is different, that it has a different refrigerant in it. And so it uses half as much energy to produce essentially the same amount of heat. So this is a very high heat producing water heater, and yet it still doesn't use much power because it has a very efficient refrigerant in it. CO2 specifically, the one on the left-hand side, those are using R134A. But so focusing on the right, if you have a sitting tub, if you have a really big like eggshell bathtub, if you have those circumstances, big tubs, then the one on the right, the Sandin, is the one for you. And if you have normal tubs, just normal showers, then all the ones on the left-hand side are the right ones for you. And I can talk about that more later, but that's just a basic. A.O. Smith, like I said, is sort of your premium, best quality one for putting inside, and the Rheem's less expensive. They also come smaller. A.O. Smith comes, the smallest is 66 gallons, and the Rheem's, they come as small as 40 gallons. This is my friend. He's in his mid-80s, and he has this swimming pool that's heated year-round. It's got a greenhouse over it with a rope swing, bananas, pineapples, ginger, all sorts of fragrant flowers. And this is where all three of my kids have been invited to learn how to swim. So I go over to CJ's house on Sundays. Oh, I meant to go there last night to go swimming, and I forgot. Shoot. Well, anyway, I helped him transition because these panels on the lower right-hand side, these are solar thermal panels, and it used to have a solar thermal preheat to a gas water heater for the swimming pool. That was inefficient and very expensive. On the right-hand side, these are what he replaced his with, which is a heat pump. The heat pump is basically a fan blowing air, and then little tiny tubes of a liquid that will turn to gas and can turn back to liquid. But it does that job at very low temperatures, like -30 Fahrenheit, in between gas and liquid. So the fan and that weird gas liquid thing is what moves heat into the swimming pool. In this case, collects the heat from the outside with the fan, heats up that liquid, and the liquid then heats up water, and the water goes in to the swimming pool. So this is $5,000, not $30,000 like his solar thermal system. I mean, way less expensive, and it works in the wintertime. It's fantastic. Looks very similar, but this is what heats your house. This is an air conditioner that works in reverse, which is called a heat pump. And these, so you can just take your air conditioner away and stick the exact same manufacturer, the same size, same electricity delivered to it. It doesn't have to be rewired. And you just put in the heat pump now. Now it does really great winter heating, and it's a more efficient air conditioner in the summertime. So you get a double benefit, lower your utility bills in the summer and lower them in the winter. Just because, by the way, gas is usually more expensive in the winter than running a heat pump in most of our country. Some parts of our country, you need to add solar panels to your roof to lower your cost of electricity to make it work. Unfortunately, that's chunks of California. But about 80% of the country, it's always a benefit to use electricity without even adding solar. So here is a different form factor. They look different, but they're the same. These are just, the fan is arranged inside this metal box at the top. The fan is on its side. And so they make the box a little bit more narrow, but it does the exact same thing. This is a heat pump or an air conditioner heat pump. You can see they can be small, they can be big. This one, the Hare Arctic Next Generation, it works at -31 Fahrenheit. So it's great for like Northern Alaska kind of stuff. Some of you guys might have remembered ground source heat pumps. They're often linked with hydronic floors. Here's the air source version that just doesn't cost as much to install. Does the same thing, heats water, water goes into your radiant floor. Ground source heat pumps these days, they're taking heat out of the ground and you have to drill to get it. So it always costs like $20,000, $30,000 more to have a drill truck show up to collect heat from the ground. It's much, much easier and cheaper to have it just be a fan collecting heat from the air that it's blowing through. And then here's radiators. It can be hard if you have old-fashioned radiators. They don't have much surface area, and so you have to run very hot water through them. New radiators have lots of little thin sheets of metal to radiate heat, and so they can work at lower temperatures. And when you're electrifying, it's best, if you have radiators now and you want to keep radiators as the way you deliver heat, it's usually easier to change out the radiators than it is to find a heat pump that goes to 160 or 180 degrees Fahrenheit. If you want to do that, reach out to me and I'll show you how. You do a two-step with a heat pump and then an electric resistance boiler to do about 20 degrees more of temperature lift. But I think it's just put in some efficient radiators. So here, I was mentioning before about ways you could save power, like with a combined washer dryer or using a heat pump dryer, etc. Here are ways that you don't have to think about making power efficiency a goal. Use as much power as you want. This is a span panel on the left. This is a different brand, Lumen, on the right. And they can take your 100 amp electrical service and they can safely, code compliantly make it act like 400 amps. So you can add your hot tubs, your fast EV chargers, everything. And you just have to plug it into this. And it has software. Because remember, I showed you how no one ever goes past 100 amps. So even though you're able to plug all these things in, you just won't use more than 100 amps. But just if that were to happen, your span panel or your lumen panel would shut something off, like the swimming pool pump, or maybe shut off the water heater for 10 minutes, or just shut something off if that were to happen. Maybe the EV charger, your fast EV charger. And then it turned back on 15 minutes later. Which is pretty much guaranteed not to ever happen according to all the field data. But if it were to happen, these two the span on the left, lumen on the right, are technical solutions. Just plug everything in and don't worry about it. These are smaller versions of that. If you just want to plug two appliances into one outlet, like an EV charger and a dryer into one outlet, like the NeoCharge or Dryer Buddy. They think this out, like that dryer plug is an opportunity. Plug one thing into it and then two devices get plugged into that and it'll balance them. Oh, and this is getting me so excited. EVs are now able to do bi-directional charging where they can charge your house, they can charge the grid. They have so much power. You put a 5 kilowatt array up on a roof. 5 kilowatts is equivalent to a car driving about 8 miles an hour. And so a car can put in the equivalent of driving like 20 miles, 30 miles an hour, which is 10 kW. You wouldn't put a solar array 10 kW up on your roof. That's a humongous solar array, but your car can do 10 kW with power being pushed into the grid. So there's the batteries in them. They're about 5 to 10 Tesla Powerwalls inside of a car. So huge batteries, huge amount of power they can give in the moment. They're just revolutionary, and it's coming forward. Almost all of the EV manufacturers now have announced this year or next year or the year after that they're making their car able to charge your house, like Ford is doing now, and Hyundai, Kia is able to do now, and Nissan Leaf.
Sean,
Yes.
great presentation. You're giving us so much great information. You've got about 4 or 5 minutes left.
Well, this is just the last couple slides then. Was mentioned, this slide explains the tax credits that are out there. So there are tax credits for the electrical components, heat pump water heaters and space heating, weatherizing, and home energy audit. So you can see here, and I'm going to send these slides out for everyone in review. This is a different tax credit that's just for solar and batteries. So it's a 30% off tax credit. It goes on till 2032, so have fun with it. And also batteries. So solar, batteries, And those are basically two sets of tax credits, the 25D for renewable energy and the 25C for electrifying your house. Now, the last point I want to make, since this is a group of people, many of you have grandchildren, is to know that every time you add one person to your house, you only add a tiny amount of extra energy being consumed. The most energy efficient households have the most people in them. Now look at this. On the left-hand side, 13 kilowatt hours a day is what one senior citizen is consuming, because these are seniors that we studied, mostly these one-person households. 13 kilowatt hours a day in an energy efficient apartment. When that now becomes two people, they only use 14 kilowatt hours. When it becomes three people in the house, it's 15. Four people, it's 16. Five people, it's 60. Like, you see how it's only 1 kilowatt hour for every extra person? The first person in the house uses the most at 13 kilowatt hours. And every extra person only uses 1 kilowatt hour more than the 13 that you start with. So I just want to encourage you to think about welcoming other people into your life, because that is the most energy efficient thing you could do. Okay, and so that is the end of my presentation. And thanks all for your attention. I'm more than happy to dig into technical stuff. It's my favorite thing to do. If you want to talk about how to electrify your house, totally here for you. Just showing you the things that are out there to get the job done.
Well, that was an excellent presentation, Sean. I've seen your presentation a few times before, and every time I see it, I learn something new, and which I did today. And I really like the yacht there. That's probably out of my price range, but thank you for that. We're going to break into breakout groups now. We're going to go into more detail, and there are going to be 4 of us who've already electrified our home are going to be the facilitators, and Sean's going to pop in from break room to break room. So what we'd like to do in the break room is come up with the questions that are really most burning, or well, we don't say burning, we talk about gas, really most important to you, really most thing that's on your mind. And we're going to talk about electrification. We can talk about funding, rebates, how to buy clean energy. The facilitators, that's Roger Luckman, Pete Marsh, Mike Allen, and myself, will lead the discussion. And we'll have some listening principles where we'll kind of listen to each other. It's a chance for all of us now to talk about and say what's on our minds, what's important to us about electrification, where we are in the journey. And I think you're going to find in talking to other people, there's a lot to be gained in the way of knowledge and support and all those kinds of good things that will allow you to make a better decision about electrification. So you'll be giving your name, location. The facilitator, that's Roger, me, Pete, and Mike, are going to be recording the what you're talking about, what's important to you. And then we're going to do a deeper dive in that session. And then also, we will send out to everyone who attends this seminar and the answers to the questions and lead the discussion about moving forward. And just so you know, we will be having more seminars between now and January where we will go into this in more detail. So Jen, are you ready to do breakout rooms?
I am. And how long do you want to go for?
Well, what's now? I'd say let's go 20 minutes.
Okay.
And then we'll come back at 20 after and maybe talk about what's some of the major issues people are facing. I think we're going to find that some of the issues are similar all across the country. And we do have Roger's from Massachusetts, I'm from California, Pete's from Southern California, Mike is from Oregon, and there's people I see on here from New Mexico and all over the country. So go ahead.
All right. I will go ahead and open the breakout rooms now, and we'll see you back here in 20 minutes.
Happy to answer any questions that people have.
Yeah, there are a couple of groups you didn't get. One group you didn't get to. Maybe that group, if they have some
Oh yeah,
they could ask. So look, we have a little bit of time left. You keep tempting us with that.
it's on purpose. This is not at all accidental.
I know you.
I want to trigger that desire feeling in you.
Yeah. There goes my retirement. Are there any questions for folks who didn't get to have theirs answered? Take a couple more, and then we'll be out of time. You may have to jump in because I can't see you all, so just jump in.
I have one question, which is if several homes wanted to collaborate bulk buy either solar or other electrification projects? Is there much experience of that? And how would one find a good contractor for that kind of work?
A general contractor is who you generally would want. A general contractor is someone who can hire the plumber, hire the electrician, hire a specialist in solar installations. They usually have their own separate license. So a GC is what they're called, a general contractor.
Mhm.
They're a higher level because they are general.
Yeah.
So that'd be your general approach. Now, yes, there was a great example where in the San Joaquin Valley in California, whole small towns were electrified because they hadn't been served yet with gas, and the utilities were required to get them off propane. So in that scenario, and bulk purchasing also, I deal with that every day because in apartments, that is fundamentally bulk purchasing. It dramatically lowers costs. To have someone not have to remobilize over and over and over to different places, to just be able to come to the same place, stay there, have things as one larger project, you have much greater negotiating. You know, if you get 3 bids, always get 3 bids. You're going to see pretty significant differences in the bids, and you can negotiate a little bit. So yeah, it's a great idea to get your neighbor involved at the same time, or neighbors, and then offer your houses to a GC and say, you know, we could do this all at once. Give us a good deal, please. You know, think about the cost savings involved and save you thousands of dollars.
Okay, Sean, there's someone I can't see. I see she has her hand up. She's sitting in the kitchen, but I see the cabinets behind her. Her name is Jen Chandler. Can you jump in? Michael, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I could jump in. I think she was in our group. We had a lot of wonderful queries. A lot of it deals with when the timing should be to do your thing. But one that stood out here is which heat pumps are best for cold climates, because some of us do live in high altitude cold climates.
Okay, so the Sancos, these CO2 heat pump water heaters, they're popular in cold climates, but they do produce water that I'm just going to leave the water heating out, because generally I would say you put a heat pump water heater inside your house, inside a garage, someplace like that. But for space heating, because I think that's what you're actually asking for. So
Yes,
this
right.
one, right, all 3 of these, I chose these because they are -10, -5 Fahrenheit, -10 Fahrenheit, -4 Fahrenheit. These are examples of heat pumps that produce heat just in a normal way without any particular challenges, even when you're having a polar vortex snap. Similarly, I did the same thing. In blue here, I try to get these ones rated. So you can see this is -31 Fahrenheit. The Hair, that's the coldest of our cold climate heat pumps in the United States right now. This ductless mini split, this is the thing that sits on the wall that produces hot and cold. So you can see -31, -15, -13, -22, -13. So what you're looking for is the cold climate heat pumps, and there's databases, a cold climate federal database that lists out the heat pumps that are the coldest of the cold for air source heat pumps. And basically all the major brands, Fujitsu, Mitsubishi, Daikin being the world's largest, Carrier, our nation's sort of biggest one, they all have a cold climate version now and have had them for years. But the Biden administration has been emphasizing this and setting up programs and competitions and funding and grants and all that. So we actually have a fair number of really cold climate air source heat pumps for heating up people's homes.
I have a question around the heat pump. Now, usually the one that goes down to -35 Fahrenheit would be fine, but once in a blue moon we go below that. What happens in the house if you're at -40?
Well, they might still produce heat depending upon the product. The refrigerant you have here, it boils at -45 Fahrenheit. But anyway, it's going to produce a trickle at this. What you want to have then is a backup heat source for those emergency moments. In northern Canada, people are putting in a small ductless mini split, but they're putting in 6 inches of insulation around the house first. There's an electrician up there that posts fairly often on LinkedIn showing how he does 6 inches of foam insulation, and then he does all of his normal electrification inside. Or he could do a 50 amp electric resistance backup heater, which is a common strategy. It is not expensive, but it just means that you have a lot of power dedicated to that electric heating element just for those crisis moments of like super duper duper cold. So that's how they're usually done, is that you have a computer-based heat pump, because the computers allow them to operate at very, very cold temperatures, and then electric resistance as a second source of heat.
Okay.
All right, I
Thank
want
you.
to stop you right there, Sean. We're getting close to 11:30. I think, can you stay on?
I can, I'm still here. You
Okay,
betcha.
well, for those of you who need to drop off, please feel free to do so. Thank you for attending this. We will have more webinars coming up. And I want to thank Sean. Sean is so generous with his time,
Happy to do it.
knowledge, and just very much appreciate all that he's done. We will be sending out the slides. We will be sending out the responses to the questions that came up in the break rooms, sending out resources, and we'll send you out a notice to the next seminar. So we all should applaud. I am. Thank you, Sean. And
Hey, I really appreciate all of you. I mean, it's your interest and your passion. I really appreciate what you're going to do, hopefully, with this presentation going forward. So thank you all.
We-
all right,
we-
well, we're gonna stay on. We'll stay on. Sean, the rest of you.
Yeah, I'll take maybe 2 more questions. I'm getting hungry for lunch, but I'd be more than
No,
happy.
we need to clone you more, Sean. We need a clone of you.
Yeah, I'll do what I can do. I've got 3 children, you know, but I try to teach my staff. I have like
Right.
15 staff, and I just try to teach people.
In
John,
our
could-
breakout group, somebody mentioned that you do a Ask the Sean show, and where is that and how do you get it?
So yeah, it abbreviates to ASK, the Ask Sean Show, but we don't usually call it the Ask. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is I have one coming up, the Ask Sean Show. I think it's in July 12th. Is that what I got here? One moment. Hold on. Just got it. I want to make sure you get this. So yes, what I do is it's like click and clack of an NPR show or Calling All Pets. I grew up in Wisconsin where public radio was popular. July 23rd. Okay, so I'm gonna put in the registration link here.
Chat.
It's like copy, and then into the chat, I'm gonna paste it and hit return. So you can register there. And yeah, it's just like this. I give a little presentation, I talk about technologies, I show a couple example homes. I do more like example homes talk. And there's usually someone there who's just electrified their house. And they're like, look what I did. We have it just be like a friendly little thing. And then it's just questions, just technical questions. And I try to go through my slides or open up a book that I have to show people more detailed answers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One more question. Jump in there. Sean, there was a question that came up in our group about refrigerants. Right now, the refrigerants are R410, as you know. What are your thoughts on refrigerants and not using R410 or some of the others?
Refrigerants, R410A is being used in the United States. Is one of the last places that it is being used. R32 has been used all over Eurasia and Africa and South America for years now. So it's a holdout because of the fossil fuel industry in Cancer Alley in Louisiana, nothing else. And they got a big payoff, about $30 billion under Trump, under one of the negotiated fiscal cliff things. So they have been transitioning away from 410A to a lower global warming potential refrigerant, which also works better. R32 boils at a colder temperature, so it does better job of heating, and it works better as an air conditioner in super hot summers. It's just a better refrigerant. So really, it's just the fossil fuel industry that's holding us back from having something better, because they could make more money off of selling the same thing. R32 is not a one-to-one replacement. Like you can't just pour it in to your existing air conditioner. So that means that for some period of time, for the next 10 years or so, people will continue to sell our 410A, and it'll just get progressively more expensive, which is what we saw with our 22. As it slowly got phased out from air conditioners, it became more expensive, and there's still R22 still for sale, but hardly anyone buys it anymore. So it's more and more expensive.
What
I
do you
just
say
expect
about-
it'll over the next 10 years, you'll see people phasing them out.
Last question, what can you say about CO2 style, like the Sanco is the one I know, and you mentioned it. Is
Well,
that a viable system?
Yeah, I mean, the stand-ins were created because in Japan, people had really high propane bills out in the countryside, and they have a habit of these gigantic sitting tubs. You know, everyone takes a shower and then they get into a 150-gallon sitting tub. So CO2 as a refrigerant is great for going from cold water to really hot water. It's not great at kind of anything else. That hot water has to just be dumped down a drain, usually. There are some custom systems that are real fancy that are using a CO2 system for space heating, where water leaves the tank and then comes back to the tank. And CO2 heat pumps hate that. They don't ever want to see warm water again. They only want to see cold water. So the Sanco 2 is a fantastic system for sitting tubs, as I explained. We use them in apartment complexes. One of these is good for 7 tiny homes in a row for domestic hot water, just giving them water for showering and things. Perfect. They're so productive of hot water. This produces 4 times as much hot water with this big fan compared to the small fan that's in the ones to the left that produces 1/4 as much hot water. And it's because of the size of the fan. To a lesser degree, it's a refrigerant. It's mostly, this is a very big box here with a big fan in it, the Sanco box, compared to the small fan inside of the water heater. So the upshot of it is that Sanco, the CO2 heat pump water heaters using CO2 as a refrigerant, there's many, many manufacturers of them all over the world. They are good at making hot water for showers and bathtubs and that. And we shouldn't be looking at that refrigerant as for heating spaces, which involves continuously heating something like air over and over, or water that is releasing its heat into the air, but it's only chilling it somewhat. And you just can't use CO2 that way. It has to just be a one and done, lifts it up to something really hot and never sees it again.
You know, every time I talk to you, I learn something. That's an important thing to know.
Yeah, I'd spent years trying to figure that out myself, because of course it was so exciting. It is a great refrigerant for heating things. But
Yeah.
that's the nature of the beast. Yeah.
Sean, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Well,
back, please. Happy to help out any old time.
Wait a minute, Sean. Beth has her hand up, and I know she has an issue
Hi, Beth.
you can help with.
Yeah, thank you. It's only partially related to that. I'll have to give you an update later, Robert. We have an existing heat pump water heater that it's a Ream. When they put it in, it's been almost 4 years now. They had to put it on a 240 line, and I think I heard you say that these heat pumps that you're displaying here now, the Smith and the Ream, don't need 240 anymore. Is that what I heard?
That's correct. Starting in 2014, I was trying to electrify apartments. I discovered that if I had a 240 volt, 30 amp product, it would trigger a service upgrade in the apartments, or even just getting a new wire delivered to it. A 240 volt wire was so hard in apartments because there's no basement, there's no attic, there's no place that you can put a wire that you're not disturbing somebody else, which is different from houses, right? So I've been working with the manufacturers starting in 2015, of meeting with them. And in 2018, we had a big symposium, and they started coming out with them during the COVID, ironically, just trickling them out. But now there's 5 manufacturers as of this spring who are making 120 volt heat pump water heaters, and that's new. It wasn't really available to you 4 years ago, but they are now. So I'm encouraging people to look at them as then you don't have to rewire, right?
Yeah, no, it's great. it's a great improvement. It was, we robbed the, anyway, it was a juggle to get that connection.
Always, yeah, a real hassle. So it cuts out one of those tasks. You don't have to have an electrician show up.
Good.
Yeah.
Hopefully I won't need to make use of that information for quite a while. We have been having issues with our heat pumps. So, but in any case, I won't go into it here. So,
Well, thank you, Sean. Thank you all.
All right.
Thank you all for attending.
You guys take care. Have a great one. Happy decarbonizing.